This is the Mid-Season Invitational pack. We're covering both 9.7 and 9.8, as those are both new since we watched most playoffs from around the world. We've got a lot to cover with twice the changes and a whole new tournament unfolding in front of us, so here goes. Only 6 champions received nerfs across the last 2 patches. In order of importance, they were Silas, Lissandra, Morgana, Kayle, Urgot, and Zed. They all saw nerfs, and they all had pro presence somewhere between sometimes and every damn game. Silas was a clean 100% presence across the top 5 regions in 9.6 and saw massive cuts to his healing and mobility. Some leagues have played 9.7, and across those games, he's down to just 11% presence, which makes me think those nerfs are on target for pro play. Next up is Lissandra, who is at 87% of champ selects across those same 5 leagues, and with massive hits to Ice Shard's cooldown, reducing her wave clear and teamfight outputs, she dropped down to just 5% presence across 9.7's pro scene. Third is Morgana, who got a lot more popular and a bit more powerful after her visual update and has been slowly climbing the professional ranks as well, just behind Lissandra at 62% presence. She was a powerful flex pick between mid lane and support, and some very light touches to her health regen, and Tormented Soil's AP ratio knocked her mid lane down a little bit, but she's still a very strong champion overall, and unlike our other 2 champions, we will see a lot of her at MSI. Speaking of champions we won't see at MSI, let's talk about Kayle. It seems that, well, she was a bit of a missed opportunity for pro teams, where despite her wings, she never quite took off in pro play. With massive nerfs to almost every single facet of her kit, she's finally at a level of power I would call balanced. But with most pro teams' reluctance to pick her up even when she was overpowered, I didn't expect to see any Kayle play at all in this tournament. The last 2 champions to see nerfs were Urgot and Zed, who were small-time picks in the late season. Zed is probably out, and Urgot might remain a fringe top lane pick, but probably not a very highly prized one. Then, there were 21 champions who got buffs in the last 2 patches, and I'm going to editorialize it down just a little bit to just a handful that I think will be worth remembering heading into MSI. Number 1 here is Nautilus, who received substantial buffs to his passive root duration and Dredgeline's damage output. Now, weirdly, we're not seeing him that much in top lane or really at all in support. No, it's mid lane AP Nautilus that is arriving, and he's been getting pro play even before the 9.8 buffs. Make no mistake, mid Nautilus is going to be seen at MSI. Joining him in the mid lane is Azir, who gained some health regen and Q damage himself. And especially with 5 other mid laners taking nerfs, there's plenty of room for more mid laners like Azir in Champion Select. Joining Nautilus on the front lines are Cho'Gath, Ornn, Sejuani, Singed, and Trundle. Cho'Gath rears his ugly head with a much shorter cooldown on Rupture and was seeing spotted play across 9.6 and 9.7. So if we're headed for a tournament full of top lane tanks, I think Cho'Gath is certainly a front runner. Alongside him is Ornn, who now has buffed up versions of his Sunfire Cape, Iceborne Gauntlet, and Abyssal Mask upgrades. Considering he can build 2 for himself, this is a substantial late game durability increase to the champion. It's also possible we see him alongside tanks like Nautilus, who would be happy to take one of those upgrades for themselves, as long as those team comps have enough backline damage. Jungler Sejuani mostly fell off the map, as teams would rather play fighters like Jarvan, Rek'Sai, and Olaf, but substantial buffs to Sejuani's primary damage ability in Winter's Wrath should do a lot to bring her back, and we will see her in the tournament. Next up is Singed in the top lane, one of my favorite champions, and I think he'll be back in action as well in 9.7. We had a nerf to his favorite choice of bling, with Dark Seals losing a lot of their efficiency. It left him in a bad spot. Now with buffs to his health regen, Mega Adhesive Slow, and Fling's mana cost, he's in a decent spot, and I know a certain Team Liquid top laner known for this pick, so, I think he's at a power level where he's pickable, but not mandatory to have in your champion pool. Of course, you can't talk about Seals without bringing up clubbing as a topic, as some of the MSI junglers might be bringing out Trundle. Across 3 patches, he's gotten better mana costs, better attack speed, cooldowns, and ability damage, and he's finally landed in a pretty good spot as a fighter who's good into tanks. Also worth noting, high-priority champions that didn't see nerfs despite being globally relevant in playoffs. Jarvan, Galio, Rek'Sai, Ryze, Jace, and Braum were all seen in over 2/3 of top 5 league play champ selects across 9.6, and I don't see those facts changing without those champs getting any weaker. Now, there are a bunch of other smaller changes that have hit the game as well, with Dr. Mundo, Garen, Leona, Pyke, Rumble, Amumu, Camille, Cassiopeia, Fiora, Gnar, Jhin, Kayn, Mastery, and Renekton all getting stronger, but I don't expect any of those to make waves at MSI, so they're not getting mentioned in anything but name. Bold prediction? IG's gonna win Worlds this year. Also MSI.